In the previous part of this lecture, we discussed about the prokaryotic cells and their general characteristics, and we also compared them with the eukaryotes. Now we will discuss about the external structures, mostly the external structures of these prokaryotes. So the first and foremost thing is the bacterial cell wall. So bacterial cell wall, they provide support and protection to the cell. It also determines the cell shape. So that's why we have these coccus, bacilli, diplococcus, spirochetes. You have those types of shapes, bacterial shapes, because of the structure of their cell wall. So the cell wall also prevents bursting of the cell. So it does not only provides their characteristic morphology, but also serves as their as a defense, or actually it's their first line of defense for especially for adverse conditions. So it helps in preventing the bursting of the cells. So how does it prevent the bursting? So if you remember from your chemistry classes, so you have your osmosis. So osmosis is basically a movement of water from the region of high solute concentration to low solute concentration. So basically, the water wanted to move to a higher, a more concentrated places. So you remember the isotonic, hypotonic, and hypertonic solutions. So in an hypotonic environment, so when we talk about the hypotonic environment, here is your bacterial cell. So basically, you have your this is the isotonic environment here on the center, and then when it goes to a hypotonic environment, so you have a low solute concentration outside the cell. So the tendency is for water to go in because it wants to get to the higher concentration inside the cell. So the water rushes in, so that produces a pressure. But because of the cell wall, there is no lysis, because the cell wall is a structural barrier. It prevents it actually fights against the pressure and prevents the cells from bursting. So if we do not have the cell wall, here in the image on the at the bottom, so you have a cell without a cell wall. So in a hypotonic environment, they tend to burst because they only have the cell membrane, and the cell membrane is actually a very loose arrangement of they are not covalently linked with one another. The components of the cell membrane, the phospholipids, they are not covalently linked. They are just they are bound together by hydrophobic interaction. So what is a hydrophobic interaction? So the hydrophobic interaction is the same way that you observe when you mix oil and water, and the oil separates into basically bubbles. It forms its own bubbles in the water. So that's the hydrophobic effect. So basically, when you shake the mixture of oil and water, you will these bubbles will separate into smaller and smaller mini bubbles, but later on they will reform. So in that same manner, the cell membrane can also separate and then can also reform. It's a self-sealing membrane. However, once it undergoes cell lysis, although it bursts, it can reseal, but the things inside will already be compromised. So it's basically a death sentence to the cell once the cell membrane is compromised or the cell membrane is breached. So the cell wall prevents that bursting of the cell. So basically, that's the protective function of your bacterial cell wall. So the structure of the cell wall, they are strong. So they are composed of the peptidoglycans. So when we talk about peptidoglycans, so these are peptides, peptide. So peptides pertains to proteins. These are one class of biomolecules. So the proteins that are linked to glycan, sugars. So these are another type of biomolecules. These are the sugars. So peptidoglycan is actually a composite of a protein and a sugar component or a carbohydrate component. So these are the N-acetylglucosamine, the NAG, and the N-acetylmuramic acid, the NAM. So here is the NAG and the NAM. So this is basically this is your sugar. So when we look at the cell wall, or when we look at biomolecules, we usually represent them in drawings. For the sugars, it's the hexagons or the pentagons, because that's the general structure of the sugars. That's the general molecular structure of the sugars. So they have the cyclohexose or cyclopentoses. So they usually form like that. So you have the cyclohexoses, NAMs, and the NAGs. And then for the peptides, we usually represent them as beads. But this is an oversimplification because in reality, proteins doesn't look like beads. They are actually are more diverse. They actually have diverse structures because of their side chains. But to simplify matters, we just represent them as beads. So this is your proteins, the peptide portion, and this is the glycan portion. So when taken together, these NAMs and NAGs, so you have your glycan chains, and then they are cross-linked with proteins, or rather peptide link cross-links. We call it the peptide cross-links. So between the peptide chains. So this gave them structural support. How does it become a structural support for the cell wall? Well, if you remember cellulose is made up of sugar. So basically, in a similar class of biomolecules like your glycan chains, it's just glucose instead of N-acetylglucosamine and N-acetyl, the NAGs. So you have your sugar, for example, in the cellulose. For cellulose, it's just plain glucose that are linked together in the similar manner. And it's quite tough. How tough it is? The cellulose is actually the component in the plant fiber. So plant fiber is quite tough. If you have abaca, if you have seen abaca or even piña fiber, so you have glucose fiber there. Even the paper is pretty much tough in itself. So you have your especially when we talk about microscopically, these are actually provides a very good structural support. And in addition to that toughness of the glycans, you have the cross links of the proteins. So this gives them a better, because you have multiple layers of the glycan chains that are cross linked. They are linked together with the peptide chains. So you have a more reinforced structure of your peptidoglycan membrane. So here is an example of a peptidoglycan from gram-positive cell, and this one is from a gram-negative cell. So when we talk about bacteria, we usually, clinically speaking, it's the classification between gram-positives and the gram-negatives, because they are because it also gives, especially for the pathogenic prokaryotes, it gives us a way or a guide to actually administer what type of antibiotic should be administered. For a gram-positive bacteria, what is efficient? For a gram-negative bacteria, what is more efficient antibiotic? And the reason for those difference in the efficiency of antibiotic is also in the cell wall. The difference between one of the main differences between the gram-positive and the gram-negative bacteria, or rather the basis of their difference, is in their cell wall. For a gram-positive cell wall, so basically they are just, this is based on the stain, the results of the staining procedure, so positive or negative. So anyway, for the gram-positive cell walls, they have 6 to 12 layers of the glycan sheets. So you have the glycan layers a while ago here. This is your glycan chain, so 6 to 12 layers of that. You form a sheet, and then that's 6 to 12 layers. That's around 70 to 80 nanometers thick. So they are made of teichoic, or rather we have teichoic acid that weaves through this peptidoglycan layer. So the teichoic acid regulates the cation flow through the peptidoglycan, because of course the cell wall, although it's a barrier, it's not a full barrier that prevents anything from entering or exiting, because if that happens, the cell won't be able to survive. So there must be some form of flow of materials in and out. So it also helps. The teichoic acid is the answer to that flow. So it may also be involved in attachments. So some bacteria that can attach on surfaces. So they also have some teichoic acids can also be used to repel phagocytes, actually depending on the cell, how they use their teichoic acid. So it can also be used to regulate cell growth and division. So here is the structure of your gram-positive cell wall. So here is the overall view of your cell wall. So it's a cell wall which is different from the cell membrane. Here is the cell membrane at the bottom, and then you have a cell wall at the top. Well, basically outer layer or outer covering. So if you look at them closely, so you have this teichoic acid. These are the teichoic acid. So it transverses from the membrane up to all across the cell wall. So you have your plasma membrane here, that's your cell membrane, and then the peptidoglycan layers. So you have this NAMs and NAGs with cross-links, and then this is your teichoic acid, the violet ones. So we call it the lipoteichoic acid because it's attached to the lipid membrane. So it's lipo for the lipid. So lipo attached teichoic acid. So basically that's that. So this is for the gram-positive cell wall. So take note, you have a cell membrane, you have your cell wall that is thick. For a gram-negative cell wall, it's a bit different. So for the gram-negative cell wall, their cell wall is smaller. They are thinner. It's only 1 to 3 layers of glycan sheet. So that's around 3 to 7 nanometers thick. And there is no teichoic acid across them. But that doesn't mean that the gram-negative bacteria are less protected. Actually, they are more protected than the gram-positive ones because the gram-negative has an outer membrane outside the cell wall. So aside from the inner cell membrane of the bacteria, you have the cell wall, and then the cell wall is sandwiched between the two cell membrane. So you have an inner cell membrane, a cell wall, and an outer cell membrane. So the outer membrane is anchored to the wall by the lipoproteins. So when we say lipoproteins, these are proteins with lipid attached to them. So the LPS, lipopolysaccharides. So these are polysaccharides, the sugars, that have lipids attachment. So you have the LPS forms most of the outer layer of the outer membrane. So it also plays a role in its pathogenicity. Actually, most of the pathogens that we have are gram-negative bacteria, or most gram-negative bacteria that we know are pathogenic. So basically, that's that. So porine proteins allow the traffic across the outer membrane. So since they do not have teichoic acid, so what takes on the role of the teichoic acid as a form of passage of material or flow of substances is basically the porine proteins. So the thin peptidoglycan layer located between the inner and the outer membrane. So you have a thinner layer. So here is your gram-negative cell wall. So compared to your gram-positive one, so the violet sheet here, this is just your cell wall. So it's very thin. It's actually thinner than the actual cell membrane. So this is the inner cell membrane and this is the outer cell membrane. And the outer cell membrane is riddled with many porins. So porins are channels that conducts water and other ions to the cell. So it allows the water and ions to diffuse to the cell. So you have lipopolysaccharides, endotoxins. These are sometimes what causes the toxicity of some pathogenic organisms. Okay, then you have the lipids. So basically, that's your gram-negative cell wall. So you have 3 layers for the gram-negative cell wall, so including the inner cell membrane. But for the gram-positive bacteria, they only have 2, including the inner cell membrane. So aside from the gram-positive and gram-negative, we also have an atypical cell wall. So these are neither gram-positive nor gram-negative. So sometimes in clinical diagnostics, they stain as gram-positive, but they are not exactly, or they are not really gram-positive. So those are the acid-fast bacteria. So like gram-positive ones, they have a thick layer of peptidoglycan linked to, instead of teichoic acid, it's the mycolic acids. So the lipids and mycolic acids makes these bacteria impermeable to many drugs and chemicals. So they are much more problematic than typical gram-positive bacteria. So an example, by the way, of this acid-fast bacteria is the Mycobacterium tuberculosis, which is the causative agent for tuberculosis. And it is very difficult to kill because you have not only its resistance because of the mycolic acids. Very few antibiotics can be used to kill them. And they're actually, one of their pathogenesis is to actually live inside macrophages. So you have those issues to also think about when administering the drugs. That's why in curing tuberculosis, it takes months of administration of non-stop, continuous, uninterrupted administration of a cocktail, more than one antibiotic regimen. So, another atypical cell wall is the Wallace bacteria. These bacteria have no cell wall. So, unlike the acid-fast bacteria, which are difficult to kill, these one are very easy to kill. So, you just change the concentration of their environment, make them hypertonic or hypotonic, and then they will die because they will burst. So they are quite rare because they can easily be killed. So no cell wall means undefined cell shapes. So aside from that, we also have other external structures of the cells that interact with the environment. So they expand potential habitat or enable survival during unfavorable environmental conditions. So for example, if the cell wall for the bacteria is like their skin, that is a barrier and contains their insides, this external structure of the cell is like the clothes that the cell have to actually protect them against environmental conditions, rather unfavorable environmental conditions. So examples are the glycocalyx, and then you also have those for movement, the fimbriae and the pili, as well as the flagella. So let's go to glycocalyx first. So glycocalyx is a simple polysaccharide chains layered just outside the cell wall. So just like a dress for the bacteria. So they are gel-like and firmly attached. If it's gel-like and firmly attached to the cell, they form a capsule. But if it's fluid and loosely attached, they form a slime layer. So they protect the cell from drying out. They are also used to protect against phagocytosis and allows the cell to colonize a new niche. So basically, when you see your what do you call this one, the colonies, so they actually form those actually sludges. These are the bacteria that has glycocalyx. They form a community of organisms in that. So you have another one is the fimbriae and the pili. So the fimbria, they are straight, stiff, short filaments. They are numerous. So they are like short hairs. And then the pinus, which are longer, thicker appendages. So they may be involved in attachment or the transfer of genetic information. So here is an example of a conjugative pilus. So you have the fimbriae, and then you have this pili. So you have the fimbriae, which is the hair-like structures, and then this is the pili. So these two bacteria are exchanging information. In fact, they are exchanging plasmids. Well, we can say that they are doing sexual reproduction because they are there's an exchange of genetic information between the two of them. Okay, so the flagella, on the other hand, this is the stiff helical protein filament that rotates to allow the movement of your cell. So it's more like a motor for the cell. So you have the flagellum, which is basically what you see outside the cell. So it's like a tail. And then it's connected to a hook structure, a rigid hook structure, and then this is further connected into a motor. So this one is a rotating motor. So it's basically a very complex machinery inside the cells. Made up is purely natural machinery. And this one is when it was first discovered, the scientists were actually amazed. They really cannot believe that you have a structure that resembles the motor that we have, the motor that we use in, for example, in the cars and other vehicles that are inside the cell. So this is your motor. So they have the rods and it actually rotates so that your flagella can move and be used to actually propel the cell forward. So the flagellar arrangement, there are several arrangements. So you have a single monotrichus, which is a single flagellum at the end of the cell found in Vibrio cholera. Amphitrchus, you have two at either ends. And then you have Lopotrichus, we have multiple but only on one end. You have Petrichus, so they are random or overall flagellar arrangement. This is found in the E. coli. So these are used, the flagellae are used by the cells to actually move. So they tend to move in a run and tumble. We call it the run and tumble movement. So they run, they break, and then they tumble around when breaking, and then they run again on a shifting directions. So they shift directions, they break and tumble to shift their direction. So that's it for the external structures of microorganisms, or rather of the prokaryotes. And then in the next part of this lecture, we will discuss about the internal structure of prokaryotes.